see if it'll pop. Come on. There it is. Okay, guys. Sorry about the delay there. Just want to make sure that the YouTube connection is made here. Make sure everything's connected right, and it is. So make sure the connection is secure and everything. It might be because my computer wanted to load a little bit. From what I've learned, basically the computer, when it loads, and it's a good thing that it does. Thank you God that it does do what it's got to do. Basically, when the computer loads a little bit, essentially it's going to slow down internet connection because it's got to focus on what it's got to upload and update and everything. So thank God it does that, because even though it might be annoying, thank the Lord it does do that. Now, I do apologize, first of all, depending on how long this goes, for a phone interruption. For those of you that have followed me for a long time, you know exactly what that means and everything, because just because of reasons. I don't want to say any more than that. But yeah, the phone will probably ring, so I do apologize for any interruptions there. And if it takes me away for a while, because, again, reasons. That's all I'm going to say. But also, want to let you guys know before we start to like the video, hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications for future content. Also, super chats are open. If you would like to donate there, be very much appreciated. Also, guys, super thanks will be open as well when this live stream finishes rendering within the time frame it ends and all that, which is like 12 to 13 hours or so. If you know what I mean. But also you can help support me at Venmo and Cash App if you want to help there. And you can support me over at patreon.com at BEWRoses. I know I haven't updated that for a while, but I'll try to get back into that as best I can. Also, you guys can find me over at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Audible, Pandora, Spotify, Overcast, you name it. If it's got a podcast as a part of it, more than likely you'll find mine there as well. Also, you can check me out at rumble.com at BWRoses, odyssey.com at BWRoses, or BWRoses5 is listed in the description. But you can find me there at odyssey.com. You can also find me at VENMO at BWRoses. And you can also find me at deviantart.com at BVW1979. You can also find me at inkbunny.net at BWRoses. You can check out the Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. One of the merchandises is listed in the shopping area if you want to check that out. It would be very much appreciated. And also, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow me on Twitter/X at BWRoses and on Blue Sky at BWRoses. First of all, as described in the description, I want to give a shout out to H Squid Reviews, who I think I forgot to tag, if you will. I think I forgot to tag them, if you will, in the Twitter. I forgot to really tag them. I'm going to double check that. I think I forgot to tag them, and I do apologize for any lag and everything. I do apologize for any lag whatsoever. So, I do apologize for that. I'm going to find H Squid here for a moment, if I can. I'm just going to look them up if I can, if they got a YouTube and everything. Maybe if I Google them, that might help as well. Let me check here. But yeah, I want to give a shout out to H Squid, of course. They did a video today talking about the Princess Sally miniseries, which we are going to talk about here as well. We're going to talk about that here as well and everything. And yeah, I think I found them. No, that's not it. Let's see, H Squid Reviews, Twitter. Let's see. Nope. I don't know if they're on here or anything. Yeah, I don't know if they're on here or anything like that. So maybe not. Maybe they're not on here. But anyway, I want to give a shout out to those guys. as well. But yeah, they did a video to H Squid reviews and everything. I want to give a shout out to them. Like I said, they did a review today. They uploaded it today on the Princess Sally miniseries, where they talked about how it came about a little bit. They gave their own honest opinion on it, and I'll tell you honestly, I did read the book when it came out. I did read the book. I was a little late to the party on it. Honestly, I was a little late to the party when I was reading it. That's kind of my fault, if you will. Let's see. Oh, there they are. I found them. They are there. They're just under a different profile, if you will. But yeah. Maybe I want to give them a shout out and everything. I'm going to link them to this as well so they can check it out. There we go. They got a blue sky. No, they don't. But yeah. Just want to give them a shout out and everything on this. But yeah, they talked about the comic, about the miniseries and how it came about and everything. And surprisingly, what they said in there is kind of, they did give their own take on the comic, how, looking at it now, looking back at it 30 years later, and everything, they kind of give their take on, what could have been done better, what could have, been tweaked here and there and everything to make the miniseries more, I guess you could say, acceptable and less confusing. And they do have a point in everything and all that, because I remember when I first read the comic, and like I said, I read it, I think, a little after it was already out. I think I ordered it online, from, I don't know where I ordered it from online from. I think it might have been, I can't remember. I can't remember where I ordered it online. I think it might have been from Archie itself, because it wasn't from Mile High. I know that. It wasn't from Mile High Comics. Nor was it from Manhattan, not Manhattan, but Midtown Comics. It wasn't from any of those. I think it was directly from Archie. Yeah, it was directly from Archie Comics, now that I think about it, because they were still advertising the miniseries even when I moved out on my own. And I think it was one of the last miniseries I got before I moved out, or around the time I moved out, or something like that. So I got that in the mail from Archie itself. And it did take me a while to get, and it did, I'm trying to find the right word to say. It did take a while to get to me, but I was able to get it. And I was very happy to finally read it. And, I thought it was a good story. I thought it really was. But like I said, I understand exactly, where he's coming from, because when I first read it, it is kind of confusing. You get so into the story and what's going on that you like the characters in the story, like the like what would be the substitute freedom fighters, the cadets, the rookies, if you will, at that time. You were a little taken aback, like you were a little confused as to what was going on with Sally. Like, why was she defending Joffrey? Why was she wearing a different colored vest? What was going on? And then when it finally, got revealed, the little twist, it's like, oh, okay, confusing, but, once they explained how it all came about, kind of makes sense, but it was a little, confusing at the get-go, or throughout at times, and everything like that. And let me get some Coca-Cola here for a second. But yeah, it was a little confusing, at that time. And, I don't disagree. But when you look back on it now, when you read the issue now, or read the miniseries now, you not only, if you've already read it, not only do you understand, looking back on it, 30 years later, and maybe throughout these past 30 years, rereading it and all that, you come to not only already know exactly what's going to happen, but you can kind of like piece all the clues together. Like, you can see exactly when certain moments happen, like when the switch happened, when Joffrey let the real Sally in on what was happening, and so on and so forth. you can kind of see, the connection. You can kind of see the connection, and then you can kind of understand how the substitute freedom fighters, or the cadets at the time as they were known, kind of came into kind of came into understanding, the situation, the uniqueness of the cover up, if you will, to prevent Robotnik from figuring out that, hey, he was being double crossed. He had been basically made a fool because Sally and Joffrey were onto him and everything from the get go. So you kind of better understand not only the confusion of the characters of the substitute freedom fighters on the inside, but you kind of on the inside of the comic, but you also understand, you kind of also understand the reason why Sally and Jeffrey went about the way they did, because they didn't want to throw off any suspicion, and also in a way these were new cadets, so if they would have been in on it, there's a risk, there and everything of things getting out. And, even talking about it now, yeah, it is kind of confusing thinking about, like, yeah, now we know why it happened, why it all occurred, but it's like, could you simplify, could you do see where H Squid is coming from when they kind of talk about the fact of why couldn't they just simplify it? Why couldn't they make it easier for us to understand? Like, do the switch, do the switcheroo, like around the end of the first act and everything. Still go about your ways and all that. And then when you get to the final act, you can still do what you could still go about with what you planned, have the same result and everything, and just, go from there. Maybe switch it out to where Sally takes off the blue vest and everything, puts it on the, the robot and everything, and go from there and everything, or whatever. You kind of see what they're talking about. Like, it would have been more simpler to go with that, and then kind of see exactly what the idea would have been, and so on. Or basically show the switch from Sally, going into a comatose state, if you will, I wouldn't say cryogenic, easy for me to say. Cryogenic state, if you will, kind of a deep sleep, anesthetic, kind of like a anesthetic like sleep, to kind of like keep things covered, keep things under wraps. Yeah, you could. It would have been better if we had seen that switch happen and had that understanding, but we didn't do it, or they didn't do it, which, even though it was confusing, when you really think about it, did, add to the intrigue. Yeah, it was confusing until the end, until we got that, revelation as to what happened, as to how it came about. But, it's just one of those situations to where it's like, could we at least seen what happened, seen the switch, and then kind of been in on it as a reader, as the reader's been in on it, knowing that, hey, this is going to be fun, towards the end when Robotnik finds out, hey, he's been duped, couldn't have we been in on it? But, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Again, I think that did add to the intrigue and everything to what we were reading, because think about it this way: you get so invested in the story, and you're not noticing the slight differences in dialogue with the two Sallys, as well as the vest coloring, that you're not realizing that what you're seeing is, you're seeing basically a character that's basically not really one and the same. It's like it's acting, the similarities and the personalities is very identical and similar, but there's something off about it, but you're not noticing that because you're so invested, or you're so invested into what's going on and what's going to happen next. So again, I understand the confusion to where why can we as the readers at least been in on what was happening, instead of being like the characters in the story left to be, pretty much be surprised in everything at the end, and so on. Drinking more Coca-Cola, because for me, I'll be honest with you, when I saw Sally with the purple vest and everything, I'm thinking, well, it's a miniseries, with any character, female or male, that gets their own little miniseries, comic book wise or television, animated live action. They're going to switch up their outfit, and everything, switch up their design just for that miniseries. And I'm thinking, okay, Sally, they probably had Sally just switch into a purple vest just for the, just for the miniseries, and save the blue vest for the regular series. I thought that at first, and to me, very, very good, very good idea to go with, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that thought that way. Only to kind of find out at the end that the purple vest was due to it being an auto animatronic and not the real deal, because the real deal was wearing the vest that in the comics Juliana had gifted to her after she had passed. So I kind of like that little detail there too. Even though looking back on it now, we now know who's who. When you, like I said, going back to what I said, you get so into it that you're not realizing that, hey, this is a fake, wearing the purple vest, and the real deal is in an amphitheater, is kind of in a, kind of a deep sleep, if you will, an anesthetic like sleep, if you will, to kind of cover their tracks and keep Robotnik off the scent, if you will. So, I'll give him credit there, because I thought that was the first thing that went through my mind when I first read the comic, until I saw the ending, and like everybody else, it was like, whoa, that's a twist, that's a surprise, and then to kind of be like, oh, once we get an explanation as to what happened, it made sense to us. It made sense to us as the reader, and so on. So again, give him credit there. Give him credit where it's due. I thoroughly was caught off by that, thinking, oh, it's a new design just for the miniseries. But what are you gonna do when you think that? You're not thinking, oh, it's part of the story. It's part, the change of the color of the vest is part of the story, and not because it's a miniseries. So give him credit there. But I thought overall, though, the miniseries, when you really look at it, I thought it was good. I thought it was a decent miniseries and all that. It was nice to see Sally get her own miniseries before Tails and Knuckles, which, H Squid did point out. She did get it before them. And, they did explain why she got it before them, but not thoroughly. Because there's been other stories going around as to why she did it, whether you believe what Pender says or not. Because according to Penders, and a lot of evidence does back these up, Sega was the one, not Archie Comics, not Penders himself or any of the other writers or team members at that time, but Sega themselves had approached Archie and its team on the Sonic book to do a Sally miniseries, because they wanted to appeal to the young girl demographic at that time. They wanted to appeal to the young girl demographic at that time, because around that time frame, girl characters, comics aimed at girls was, as well as shows aimed at girls, were becoming big hits and everything. And characters in these shows were becoming big hits with the female demographic. They really were. For example, the one thing that H Squid pointed out is, you take a look at the Little Mermaid and Barbie, which were being licensed out to Marvel, and they were selling like hotcakes. And Disney princesses, even though they didn't become a thing until early to mid 2000s, they were starting to find their footing even back then. And I think the reason, because I do have to give credit to Disney here, whether anybody wants to acknowledge it this way or not. Disney had the Aladdin series on at that time. They had the Gargoyles series on at that time. And both series had two badass female characters. Aladdin had Princess Jasmine, who's one of my favorite Disney princesses, I will admit that. And Gargoyles had Elisa Maza. Elisa Maza, if you will, as well. And having those characters obviously was an inspiration to the likes of, Sega, and everything. And they're like, well, if they can have their badass characters, we should have our own. And also they saw what Nintendo was doing with the Marios and saw that, hey, Princess Peach was becoming a thing as well, becoming a badass, in different interpretations. Because you look at Nintendo Magazine, they had the Mario manga in that, on a monthly basis, where Princess Peach was shown as a badass and everything, coming to like Mario's aid, disguised as disguised as Luigi and such. Fighting her own battles. And this is way before we got the Peach we got nowadays, especially in the movie. They started seeing that, obviously, along with what Disney was doing, and like, yeah, we gotta have our own badass female character, one that's gonna appeal to the female demographic like these characters. And obviously they saw the popularity Sally was having with fans, and like, that's our character. And you also got to remember, this was around the time that Amy Rose was also, being introduced, but she was not at that level yet. She wasn't fully established yet like Sally. And Sally was that one character, female character, that was established outside of the games, with the exception of the cameo in Spinball, and then the planned appearance, in the Sonic Mars game, as well as the planned appearance and maybe playability in what would have been a Sonic side-scroller game on the Sega Genesis based on Satam. So they saw that they had the character they needed, and they wanted to test the market with her. And it wasn't just testing the market with her when it came to the comic. They wanted to do more with her. According to H Squid, and this is also confirmed, they wanted to do a video game based on her. They wanted to make merchandise based on her, and they did get merchandise out, based around her. When it came to the Sonic and Sydney show, I should know because I have the Princess Sally plush. It's, in my collection, which, by the way, is not for sale, never will be for sale. Paid too much for her off eBay, so that's never going to happen. But, yeah, basically, they had stuff like that, selling like hotcakes in the Sydney show, and selling for big bucks, if you will, on eBay, even today. So obviously they saw, potential in the character. The problem was basically the stories that Penders and his team wanted to do for her character. Sega rejected. They said no, you can't use any character outside of Sally and Robotnik. It can't be no characters, can't be no Sonic, can't be no Tails, can't be no Freedom Fighters from the main book. You got to use just Sally and Robotnik, and then you got to come up with the rest. And that's how Joffrey St. John and the substitute Freedom Fighters, the Cadets, came to be. Because of the fact that they would not give Penders or the other writers the opportunity to create, a story that incorporated at least some other characters we knew. Penders, one of the stories they had come up with, I think Penders may have, was Sally would discover her mom was still alive, but she was roboticized and part of this underground resistance, and that her mother would turn out to be evil, and she'd have to fight her. And Sega shot that down. I think one of the reasons was too dark. It was too dark. You can't do that. And then the other one was a Thelma and Louise like story with Bunny and Sally traveling across Mobius to, sabotage bases and everything that Robotnik had, on the way back to, Knothole and everything, with maybe some kind of intel and everything that they gathered, and they said no to that, and they said no to that too. And so they were stuck with coming up with an idea of, okay, what can we do, with just using Sally and Robotnik, because again, that was the edict. And obviously they came up with I thought it was a decent idea. I thought they came up with a decent idea, a little confusing, there's no doubt, twists and turns here, no doubt. But I think they did those twists and turns, as confusing as they were, even though we know, even nowadays, even though we know what the end result is and what's going to happen at the end, those twists and turns did help the comic. Help keep the intrigue in the comic story. Like it kept you invested. Did it help the sales of the comic? No, it didn't. It didn't help the sales whatsoever, and that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing that it didn't help the sales whatsoever when it came to the book doing well. It didn't help the sales. I mean, it got outsold by other comics in-house that were based on female characters like Veronica and Betty, and then competitional wise, Little Mermaid and Barbie and so on. It wasn't a good sign when they get outsold by those, and basically the main book outsells it by like what, 300 copies, 300 units. That's not a good sign. But again, the marketing, I think wasn't done very well. I mean, it was done decently, I guess you could say as best as they could, by advertising it, not just in the main book, the main Sonic book, but in other books like Archie and Friends, Betty and Veronica and so on. But outside of that, and I think even Ninja Turtles was still under the license at that time. I think, they were at the tail end of the Ninja Turtle license, and I think it got advertised in there too. But, it wasn't advertised in a way to where it's like, it had a page dedicated to it. It had a page. Yeah, I'm not going to say it didn't. You could see it, here on the screen. It did have, some pages dedicated to it, but it didn't like have full-on advertisements, all around. Like, you didn't see an advertisement for it, at the end of a book, where when you get to the end of the book, you see the letterings and all that, and all of a sudden here's an advertisement. It's like, whoa, what's this? It didn't have that. The advertisement, most of the time, from what I can remember, would be right in the middle of the issue. And even though that did help a bit, it didn't help the way it should have. It didn't help the way it should have. And and the thing is, we didn't have the internet the way we have it nowadays. I guarantee you, if we had the internet and social media like we do nowadays, back then in 1995, I guarantee you this issue or this miniseries probably would have sold a lot better than it did back then. It would have sold a lot better. It would have sold a lot better then back then, if it had, if what we have today from social media and internet and everything was integrated 30 years ago. There's no doubt it would have sold a lot better, but unfortunately it didn't. And I do agree the promotional covers that they were showing when they were advertising the book didn't help as well. It didn't help as well. I mean, I'll look at the one where she looks badass and everything, where she's taking down SWAT bots and everything. I think if they would have used that like as a main advertisement tool, for the book without showing the other covers, I think that could have helped. Basically the promotional cover for issue 1 and issue 2, if you would have just left those out and not used them, but used the third one would have, I think, helped out in the long run. Like, you could have kept the finalized covers of issue 1 and 2, and used the promotional one as well. And I think if you would have done that instead, those 3 covers, I think that could have helped out sales in a huge way. But unfortunately, they didn't. The covers that he went with, even though decent, the first 2 basically made it look like, yeah, here's the star of our show, but yeah, the star's basically a damsel in distress. Now, H. Squid did mention that, probably the reason they were doing it that way was if those were gonna be the covers they were gonna go with, which they didn't, that basically it would have been, basically the reason they would have done it is to basically go with the old don't judge a book by its cover method, if you will, or trope. But, they didn't. They went with the covers we got, and I thought those are decent covers. I know H. Squid felt that they were a little crowded at times and everything, or a bit small in areas, and that's their opinion. If they want to run with that, that's their opinion. But I thought overall they were decent covers, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And again, like I said, I thought the story was decent in its own right. I mean, yeah, it wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, and look, we'll all agree we didn't like the idea that they were pairing Sally off with a third love interest to create a love triangle. I'm not going to, praise that, because we all knew that was just a one-time thing. I mean, one of the comparisons I've always used, especially during the Iron Dominion arc, when they had paired off Sally with Monkey Khan, or Ken Khan, if you will, the one comparison I always made was basically this is similar to Zach Morris being paired off with two one-time love interests throughout the Saved by the Bell series. Like in the Saved by the Bell Hawaiian style movie, he gets paired off with a young mom there who's only like a year or two older than him. And that was just for that movie, and that was it. Nothing more. And then you take a look at the beach episodes where they had summer jobs. He gets paired off with the owner's daughter, and guess what? That was just a one-time deal for that. And then he gets paired off with this other girl who is basically supposed to be a replacement for the Kelly and Jesse characters, and that was a one-time deal, and nothing came of that, because eventually, who did she end up with in the end? Who did she end up marrying? Well, not he, but who did he end up marrying, I should say. Getting a little tongue-tied there. Who did he end up marrying in the end? Who did he end up with in the end? Kelly Kapowski. That's who he ended up with. Tiffany Teresan's character. You know, Tiffany Amber Teresan's character, he ended up with her. You know, he ended up, back with her, in the end. Now, if I said any otherwise and all that, I'm sorry about that. I got a little tongue-tied, a little into it a little bit, a little confused. That's my fault. But you kind of get what I'm saying. And I looked at the Sally and Monkey Con, Ken Con situation as being very similar. It was just done for the story, and it was. It was done just for the story. And the same thing is done, and the same thing is said here. Joffrey, if you will, he was only brought in for the potential Sally comic had this miniseries succeeded. He was only brought in to be the love interest, one-time love interest for the character, and that's it. Yeah, he was brought back from time to time to create that love triangle between him and Sonic. There's no doubt. And this is what made him very disdained by a lot of fans, because it's like, who does this guy think he is? I mean, you take a look at one of the story arcs, basically, that Carl was working on, Carl Bowlers, where basically the characters were in high school, Sally was doing homeschool and everything, and Sonic wanted to go see her, and Jeffrey's like, well, you got an appointment? And everything, and Sonic's like, no, when has that ever stopped me before? And I do apologize, that's the phone right now, I told you that would happen. Hold on, I'll be right back. Hello?
Okay, I'm leaving.
All right. No. It was just something from Vision, something from the iVision place, that Vision. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. I told you that was going to happen. If those of you that have followed me for a while, you kind of understand exactly what that might have been. But anyway, like I said, basically we all recall that story to where the characters were back in high school. Sally was being homeschooled instead of being in high school with them. And, Jeffrey was basically manipulating Elias, who was temporarily king at that time because his father was ill. And basically Elias allowed Jeffrey to manipulate him to the point that Sally's friends couldn't see her without an appointment, and Sonic's, wanting to see her, and Jeffrey's like, well, do you got an appointment? He's like, no, when has that stopped me before? And then Jeffrey just slams the door in his face saying, well, she is royalty, And a lot of people can assume, that the reason he did this, manipulating Elias to basically, do things his way, basically use Elias as a puppet to run the kingdom his way, is because Joffrey wanted to get closer to Sally. That's how a lot of people looked at it. That Joffrey was using it to get closer to Sally. And obviously it blew up in his face. It made him open his eyes and realize that, he was letting his ego get the best of him, and that he was never going to win the heart of the princess. But in turn, who did he end up with? Hershey the cat. Which I think was a better option in the long run. I think a lot of people would agree. But this is why he was always disdained, because of stuff like that. And then, of course, Pender's coming out and saying one of the ideas he had for Joffrey, which could have been, in between this time frame of, them being back in school and everything, even though that was a Bowler's idea, was for Joffrey to take Sally's virginity, and it's like, why would Penders come up with that kind of idea? That's stupid. Why would you come up with that kind of idea? That doesn't make sense for the characters, it doesn't make sense for the characters, in this context of this being an all ages, almost kids comic. But that was one of his ideas. And a lot of fans did not like that. And this is why Jeffrey has always had the disdain that he's had. Which is why I think Ian Flynn went in the direction he did with the character later on before the post-reboot and everything. And that is basically to, play on the fact that nobody liked him, so why not put him in a situation where he's not going to be liked? And there you go. Why not play into a situation where he's not going to be liked? And that's what they did. So, this is... So basically, the disdain for him, just started here, and it just slowly manifested itself over time until we got to, like I said, the storyline where they were back in high school, where they were placed back in high school, and Sally's being homeschooled, and basically Joffrey was manipulating Elias, for his own reasonings and his own personal gains, and it came back to bite him. End of story. End of story and all that. And yeah, it's just one of those situations to where it's like, if you're going to create a character, and you want them to be like that third wheel, that third, that second love interest, to create a love triangle, then don't create a character based on a character that nowadays has been canceled by the likes of, the woke and SJW cultures and everything, because of the way he was portrayed back in the 50s and 60s. Don't base him on a hybrid of that character and the James Bond character, because all you're basically doing is you're going to turn this character into not a likable character, but a character that basically fans are going to maybe, not just maybe, but most definitely, have their doubts about. And everything upon arriving. Even if this character is meant to be good, or be on the side of good, there's just something about him to fans throughout the character's history that just made him very unlikable. And fans just, they just could not put their finger on it until they started seeing, like I said, some of the actions of this character in certain story arcs and all that. And only then did they start realizing, yeah, this guy's a jerk. This guy's a jerk. Excuse me there again. This guy's a jerk. He needs to get what's coming to him, and he eventually did, which, again, opened up his eyes and made him realize, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that shit. Maybe I shouldn't have done that shit, and just move on from there. But, yeah, again, I get why people didn't like the character. I can get why people didn't like the Hamlin character in the miniseries as well when he was introduced, because just as we would see him portrayed later on in the comic, especially during what was known as Sally's trial, Hamlin was basically a jerk. Very judgmental, a very judgmental character, very jerk-like, and prone to basically let his emotions, his emotions get the best of him, and everything. And again, we saw that here in the miniseries when he was introduced, and again, just like Joffrey, it manifested over time, slowly, but it manifested. And like I said, we saw that in Sally's trial, in the Sally's trial story, where he wanted to try to basically convict her and put her behind bars. And the real reason wasn't because she did the right thing, via authority given to her, but basically, he was mad at the fact of she didn't go up to him in his mind and say, "Hey, Hamlin, we're going on a mission. You want to join us?" She didn't do that. And he was mad about that. Now, understanding that he is a freedom fighter, but he's meant for backup. He's meant to basically come in, alternate, if you will, when it's needed. And he was mad about that. And look, I'll give Archie Sonic Online a lot of credit. Okay, I'll give Archie Sonic Online a lot of credit. They have basically done what they could to redeem Hamlin, based on what he was portrayed as in the official comic in their continuation. I'll give them credit there. I'll give them credit that they're trying to redeem the character a little bit better than the way he was portrayed in the official book. The same with Rosemary Prower and everything. They're trying to redeem the council and make them kind of more, I guess you could say, humanized to understand, look, they're gonna make decisions that not a lot of people are gonna agree with, but they also have to realize that there are threats out there that they gotta just allow the freedom fighters or those qualified to take care of those threats to take care of them. End of story. End of story. No matter how you look at it. No matter how you look at it. But, I'll give Archie Sonic Online credit for doing that. The same with Joffrey St. John. And like I said, they're doing the same slowly right now, slowly but surely with Rosemary Prower. So give them a lot of credit there. But yeah, I get why people didn't like Hamlin from when he was first introduced and even up to when he became a council member. I can understand that. And you can't blame people having that disdain and everything, because Sally's trial is what really put their disdain for that character over the top. It put it over the top. It's like, really? You're putting her on trial because you're just mad? You're throwing a hissy fit? Because she didn't call upon you to join them on missions? That's not an excuse. That's not a reason. To waste the council's time and everything. That instead you should just talk to her. Come face to face with her and say, look, you trained me to be a freedom fighter. Let me prove I can be one. Go and talk to them. But again, didn't do that. And this is why people disdained him. Because of that. And also because of the way he was first introduced. When you look back at the miniseries for Sally, they didn't particularly like him then either. Just drinking some Coca-Cola again. But again, I understand. I understand basically, where people are coming from when they look back at this miniseries and they're like, this character, or these certain characters that were introduced, there was something up with them. There was something like a little off with them, a little up with the, up with them, a little off about them. And obviously, future writers like, Ian Flynn, and I think even Penders did it at one point, kind of capitalized on those disdains and everything, Cole Bowlers as well, with the way he portrayed Jeffrey during that one arc that I mentioned, where basically they disbanded the group, put them in high school, put Sally as homeschooled and all that, and all because Jeffrey wanted to stroke his ego to make him and his team look good, but also try to win the heart of the princess, which, again, came back to bite him. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. But outside of all those things, I thought, the story was decent. I thought they did a good job with Sally's portrayal in the miniseries. And, could it have done better? Yeah, it could have done better. Could have been promoted better? Absolutely. There is no doubt. There is no doubt that it could have done better, and everything, in the long run. It could have done better. Could have done better if they had promoted it right. There's no doubt it could have been done better. I mean, I'll look at it this way. If I was Archie Comics, and I wanted this book to sell, or if I was Sega, I should say, and I wanted this book to sell, then I would have basically told Archie Comics, do what you got to do to promote this book. Go out of your way to promote this book. And I would have told him, go to various comic shops, contact various comic shops in the New York area, in the Los Angeles area, the San Francisco area, the Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas areas, the Miami, Florida areas. Contact as many comic book shops as you can and get them to promote this miniseries. If I was Sega, I would have done that, and I would have had Archie do that to, get sales up for the book. But Sega, unfortunately, didn't do that because they were depending on Archie to be the ones to do it, and in the end, Archie didn't do it. They didn't do it and everything. They didn't do it. And unfortunately, because of stuff like that, and the only promotional material we get was in the middle of a lot of different Archie comic-related comic books, it just didn't help it in the end. It just didn't help it. And, yeah. It's just one of those situations to where when you look back on it now, 30 years later, you kind of think to yourself that, again, as I mentioned earlier, had we had the technology we have now, from social media to the internet and all that, as it is now, back then, there's no doubt the comic would have sold like hotcakes, in my opinion. It would have sold massively. I mean, you look at Tangle and Whisper, the miniseries, and I think that sold very decently for IDW. And the reason it sold very decently is not just because the characters are referenced in Sonic Frontiers, not just because the characters are in the mobile games and they got some plushes, but also the fact that basically we are in an age to where the miniseries were promoted all across the board. They had all kinds of media to be able to, get the comics promotional, off the ground. And that's why it succeeded, in my opinion. That's why it succeeded. Not because, the fact that the characters were, like I said, in all these other parts of Sonic, or referenced as well, but because you had social media. You had, the internet the way it is, helping to make that happen, in my opinion. Helping to make that happen, period, no matter how people would want to perceive it. No matter how people would want to perceive it and all that. So I think if we'd had the technology we have now back then, there's no doubt, in my opinion, this comic would have sold like hotcakes. It would have. Now, here's the thing. Could the Sally miniseries, if done today, could it work? Yes, I think it would. Would it have sold better if done today? Well, like I said, we got technology today we didn't have back then. We have social media, we have Twitter, Blue Sky, True Social, YouTube, podcasts of every kind. Honestly, I think yes. It would have probably sold a lot better if done today. Now, do I think the story would have remained as is? Maybe it would have stayed the way it was. I think honestly there would have been some tweaks. There's no doubt. I think if it was done today, people have a lot more respect. The writers, I should say, have a lot more respect for the readers, because they were fans themselves, readers themselves at one point. And they would have basically made sure that fans were in on what was going on from the get-go. They would have made sure fans were in on what was going on from the get-go. And they would have done it in a more, I guess you could say, they would have done it more in a way that you'd still get the twist, but you'd know it was coming, you just didn't know how it was coming. They basically mix it up, is what I'm saying. They would mix it up to where you knew what was going on, you were in on it, but you weren't sure exactly how they were going to resolve it, or how the villain was going to basically be revealed as being duped, if you will. So, yeah, I think. So yeah, honestly, I think, they would have done something like that. They would have let fans in on what was going on, but they would have done it to where, there was still going to be that twist. And even though we as fans would have been in on it, we'd still be a little surprised, caught off guard a bit of how it was done. But they would do it in a way to where we would be in on it, but still be surprised, with the outcome. I think they would have done that. I think, it would have been, I think honestly the ending would have been more, I guess you could say, more respectful, if you will, for the Sally character. I think, with Jeffrey wanting to kiss her and everything, he would have gotten her in that position, but she would have said, let's not do that right now and everything. Let's just, Let's just take it slow. Let's just start out as friends and all that, and go from there. And I think that would have worked better. I think you would have had her kind of be like, okay, Jeffrey, that's going a little too far. I'm already with somebody, or I'm kind of in a kind of have her explain that she's kind of in a relationship right now, if you will, with somebody, and just take it one step at a time, and go from there. Just one step at a time and go from there, as friends, and then and then just wait and see what the future holds. I think they would have done that. I think that I think if they would do that, unlike the I'm trying to find the right word to say. I don't want to get lost in my thoughts here. This is what happens when you do things unscripted and on the fly and live as well. Live across the board. But anyway, like I said, I think they would have. I think the ending would have been changed. Essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. To where, as I said, Sally would be more like, yeah, let's not go that way. Let's just start out as friends, as comrades, and that's it. And see what the future holds. Just take it step by step, and maybe even have her acknowledge that she already has somebody, or she is kind of in a relationship with somebody right now, and just go from there. Just go from there, and see and see what the future holds. And I think that would have been I think that would have been received a lot better. Then I think not would be, but would be received a lot better, or could be received a lot better, had if the story was done today. If the story was done today and everything, so yeah, I think honestly it could be done today. Like I said, with us in on what was going on, still give us a twist at the end that would even surprise us, even though we'd be in on it, or we would already be in on what's going on. And I think the ending would have been more appropriately done. Could be done more appropriately, to where Jeffrey would want to go for the kiss, but Sally would be like, "Yeah, let's not do that, and let's just be friends. Take it one step at a time. Acknowledge she already has somebody, or she is seeing somebody, and just like I say, take it step by step, and just wait to see what the future holds for them, and maybe they'll cross that line if it ever ends up appearing again." But that's some of the changes I think would have. I think that's some of the changes that I think they would implement if the story was to be brought out today and everything, for us to read. I really do, but we'll have to see. We'll just have to see what We'll just have to see if maybe somebody decides to take time out of their schedule, and maybe Archie Sonic Online, maybe Archie Sonic Restored. Or somebody that does a Archie Sonic like web series, or web comic, excuse me there. Maybe somebody will take time out and decide to redo the Sally miniseries for today's audience, and maybe implement some of those things that myself and H Squid, and others, excuse me there, have talked about. Basically implement, letting us in on what's happening. Implement, a different ending to the series and everything, to where Sally doesn't go for the kiss, but kind of pushes him off, or maybe basically does a friendly judo throw on him, and says, hey, let's just start as friends, and take it step by step from there, and just and just see what the future holds. I think if anybody wanted to take time out of the schedule to do something like that, I think it would be more. I think people would be more receiving of it, of the story being similar, if not the same, to the original, with those changes, than the original itself. But yeah, I could see if they wanted to, and everything, if they wanted to, I could see the comic, the miniseries working today as well with those kind of changes. I definitely could. I can even see it happening in the IDW book if they wanted to. Like, you got Belle going off on her own. You got Lanolin going through this character development of redeeming herself and everything, trying to find her place. I think if they were to do a story similar with those characters individually, I think it could work either way with them too. To where you could have us in on what's happening with Lanolin or Belle, and then the ending would still have its twist, and you could still do an ending similar but alternate to the original. And we would be more receiving of it, more receptive of it. In my opinion, more receiving and receptive of it, in my opinion. But again, it's like I said, it's up to whoever wants to. It's up to IDW in that department, I should say. But as far as like redoing, remastering, the book today, the miniseries today, and changing some things to match today's society. Again, whoever out of Archie Sonic Online, Archie Sonic Restored, or anybody that's doing an Archie Sonic related web comic or web series, I think honestly, if they want to take time out to do something like that, I'd say go ahead and do it. I'd say go ahead and do it, and give the fans something that they can sink their teeth into, and kind of have a different take on what on the story. And maybe it, if it does well, it might get the attention of some people some people that used to work at Archie Sonic, like Penders and others. And maybe they'll realize, if we would have done this, the comic would have sold better, because apparently people reading it as a web remastering are double the number, I should say, double the number of the units sold, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I think yeah, the comic could work today if it was done today, and everything. But I think two things that would be changed, like I said, is us being in on what's going on, even though we still get the twist, which would probably still surprise us, but we'd know it was coming. We know the reveal would be coming, just not how it would be done. And also, I think the ending, as well, I think would be redone. Period. I think the ending would be redone to where Jeffrey would want to go for the kiss, but Sally would push him off or do a friendly judo throw, and kind of be like, yeah, as much as I appreciate, maybe it's like, hey, as much as I appreciate you wanting to be, wanting to get close or friendly, let's just start out as friends and just take it one step at a time and see what the future holds. And maybe even have her acknowledge that she's already seen someone, of course, that being Sonic. So that way, Jeffrey be like, okay, no problem, I get it. Maybe I was coming on too strong, but, maybe you have him compliment her. Maybe you say something like, hey, you can't blame me for being, attracted to a strong leader like you. To a strong leader like you and everything. You can't blame me for that. And maybe you just have him do like the kiss on the hand deal, bitter adieu, and that's it. That's it. Just go from move on from there, and leave room for the return of the character in the main comic, and maybe a hint and everything at a future sequel and all that, in the future and all that. So yeah, again, I think it could work today. There's no reason it shouldn't be able to work, especially with those changes. And of course, there could be some other changes too. Like you could have Hamlin, be him, still be the way he is, but basically you could have Sally not tolerate his BS. Just have her, the legit her, if you will, and the robo her, kind of not deal with his BS, and maybe the legit her tell him, if you cross the line one more time, if you get out of hand one more time, you're out. So you could, so I think, you could change that up too. And maybe even change up that the automation of Sally, the Robo Sally, would be reprogrammed a little bit by the real Sally with the help of Nicole. And then you could just, wait to see the fireworks go off from there, if you catch my drift. But yeah, again, with some changes, like I mentioned, I think it could work today. I really do. And I think it would sell a lot better than it did 30 years ago. But I think if they had what we have today, internet and social media-wise, 30 years ago, if they would have what we have now, it probably would have sold a lot better too. And I think a lot of people would be in agreement with that. But yeah, unfortunately, the sales didn't do so well overall for the book. And basically, it caused any potential plans to do a Princess Sally video game and any other Princess Sally merchandise or ideas to basically be shelved indefinitely. for the foreseeable future. Thankfully, it wouldn't be too long till we got something Sally related, merchandise wise and everything. But it would only be in Australia, like I mentioned earlier, with the Sonic and Sydney show. Which, by the way, as I said, I ended up through eBay getting a Princess Sally plush, from that show, mailed to me directly from Australia. Which, as I've said before, that plush is not for sale, no matter how many times people ask. But yeah, we had to wait a couple of years, but at least we got something. At least we got something. And what's crazy is she is still very popular today. I mean, a lot of people make comparisons to her being kind of like an inspiration for characters like Amy's personality in the IDW comics at times, and mostly like Sonic Frontiers and Sonic Forces. Some made a comparison between her and Lanolin recently in the IDW books as well, and that's a fair comparison. And whether you like the character or not, that is looked at as a compliment when you have a character like, Amy Rose, the today's Amy Rose, if you will, in the comics and games, being compared to her in personality, as well as having a character like Lanolin being compared to her in personality, because that's kind of a compliment, because it shows you the legacy that character left behind has, given to the Sonic franchise. And this shows you why fans and even those working on the game, like an Ian Flynn and his team, probably want the character back. And hopefully someday we will get the character back. Just not knowing when and where that's going to happen. I mean, you want to know how popular Sally's character is? Fans want her in the Sonic movies. They want her in the Sonic Cinematic Universe. And if we get her, that's great. And I can promise you anything, whenever that happens, if it's a theatrical debut, mid-credit scene, whatever, that roof off that theater, or off several of those theaters, the roof is going to blow. It's going to blow to Kingdom Come, if you know what I mean. When that happens. But again, we'll have to see what the future holds for the character. But I thought, overall, looking back at this miniseries 30 years later, I thought it was good. I wish it would have sold better. But yeah, it was decent for what it was. And people have to also understand that this whole concept for Sally, started basically in a backup story where her mentor Juliana passed away, and everything, by giving her one last test and everything, and before she passed, and that basically began the whole Sally story arc, which led into In Your Face, which was very Sally centric, led into the miniseries, or not miniseries, but the two backup stories in the main comic, which led, of course, into the miniseries. So, yeah, she had a lot of story, a lot of spotlight given to her for this moment, because Sega was banking on her being their answer to Elisa Mazza, from Disney's Gargoyles, to Jasmine from Disney's Aladdin, and so on, as well as being her answer to the likes of Princess Peach from Super Mario Brothers, mostly the manga version of Princess Peach, from my point of view. But unfortunately, the comic didn't sell well enough to make that happen. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when that doesn't occur and everything? But again, I thought the comic was decent. I thought it was good. For what it was. And like I said, if it was done today, there's no doubt you would probably have some changes done. Like, we'd be in on what's going on, still with a little bit of that twist at the end that could still catch us off guard, even though we've been on what's happening. You could have Sally, you could have Sally basically, get on Hamlin and say, hey, you cross the line one more time, you get out of hand one more time, you're out. You maybe even have her reprogram with Nicole's help, the Robo Sally, and have that Robo Sally, basically be the same way. Towards Hamlin, like, hey, you screw up one more time, you're out. And then the ending, honestly, instead of Joffrey kissing her and all that, and establishing a second love interest for her and doing the love triangle thing, I think you have her basically push off on him, very friendly like, or do a friendly judo throw, and kind of tell him, hey, I'm already seeing somebody, or hey, let's take it one step at a time, as friends, and just see what the future, holds from us, holds for us from there. I think with those significant changes, yeah, I think the comic could work today as well as it attempted to do 30 years ago. But anyway, though, guys, that's just my thoughts on it. Again, shout out to H Squid Reviews on their video they did today, which was a lot shorter than this live stream. I can guarantee you that. But let me know what your guys' thoughts were on the Sally miniseries. Again, guys, comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notification. Also, check me out at all the outlets here in the description, from all your favorite audio video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Audible, Spotify, I should say, Radio Public, Overcast, or anywhere that has a podcast. You'll probably find mine there as well. Also, check me out at rumble.com at BWRoses, odyssey.com at BWRoses or BWRoses5. Also, check me out at VENMO at BWRoses. Also, check me out at deviantart.com at BVW1979 and inkbuddy.net at BWRoses. Also, check out the Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also, guys, check me out at patreon.com. Support me there at BWRoses. And follow me on Twitter/X at BWRoses and at Blue Sky. But guys, those are just my thoughts on this 30th anniversary year of the Princess Sally miniseries. What are yours? Let me know in the comment section down below.